Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am currently in Kansas City, Missouri, and today I have Otis Milton with me. He is in Los Angeles, California. Otis, if you could just please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you, and we can get this conversation going.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Miss Jessica, good friend for a very long time. I appreciate you sharing the platform with me today. But like you said, my name is Otis Milton. I am a I'm a mortgage banker here in Los Angeles. Been in the field of real estate just under 10 years. So I've been a real estate agent. Now I'm a lender. So I've kind of touched every part of the real estate business. So that is what I do by profession here in Los Angeles. I am a father of 4 daughters who are absolutely everything to me. And I'm here to share with my friend.
Great. Thank you so much. And I do want to thank you again for agreeing to be on my podcast. I know I asked you and it was kind of random, but I really appreciate it. And I know you're doing a lot in the community. One of the things that we had talked about was, like you mentioned, the fact that you do real estate. So if you could just let me know how you got into that field, kind of what are some of the things you're doing now regarding that?
Yes. It's been a long journey. I'll tell you that for sure. But I got into real estate. My one of my good friends and mentors was a real estate broker, and he was like, "What are you gonna do?" I was still kind of in school, and I had a full-time job. I was okay, but so what are you gonna do, like, for the long haul? And so he gave me my introduction to real estate, and I started working with him kind of part-time, getting some on-the-job training, and but I was dragging my feet. I just wasn't taking it seriously. Even after I first got my license, I wasn't really fully engaged in it because I was a manager for a retail store, and I was comfortable, right, which is very, very dangerous, right? So I was comfortable, and but I got to a point where I just started to want more, right? I wanted to be a little bit more fulfilled in what I'm doing, more than just the paycheck that gets me over every 2 weeks. And so I seen in real estate, you were able to help change lives, right? One thing that we know for sure is that people who own homes in this country have a higher net worth, right? They have higher net wealth, right? They can send their kids to college. They can start businesses, right, out of the equity of their home. If we don't know nothing, that's a fact. So I was like, man, this could be fulfilling, and I could make a good earning, right? And so that's what kind of brought me into it. And from there, man, it's been a tremendous the story, right? How it all it evolved. It was tough, man. I after the first 6 months when I didn't make a single dollar, I was like, oh my God, I want my job back. What happened? And it was tough, and I wanted to give up a whole lot of times, but it was just the grace of God that kept me going. It was my daughters that kept me going. It was just the energy of wanting to succeed at something, and I joined a real estate organization, and this I think probably what kept me going, kept my fire going. It's a national real estate organization. It's black owned. It's a black owned and operated organization as well. It goes by the name of NAREB. It's the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And this organization was founded over 73 years ago. This is our 73rd year, right, in existence. And we were founded out of a need because back before the 1960s, when you were African American and you passed a real estate test, you could not become a realtor. They would not accept you. They would not accept your application or your money. And that's when this organization was founded. And we're the only other national trademarked real estate organization other than the realtors. We go by the realtors, right? So we have nearly 2,500 chapters across the country. And I've been able to elevate into leadership within that organization. And so right now I serve as the first vice president for our state board. So for the actual California chapter, I am the legislative chairperson for all state affairs, which is really great because we know that also policy is how we get access to some of these things and for our communities. So I'm just excited about that. And then we started a new affiliate chapter here in Los Angeles by the name of the Young Realtors Division. And what the Young Realtors Division is charged with is getting out there into the community and having a big emphasis on bringing people into the field of real estate, letting them know that this is something that they could do. So what I just engaged in, and unfortunately COVID-19 put a halt in it because we were set to start March 21st. We have a program, a mentorship program with Crenshaw High, which is the first school that we rolled out with, where with the magnet program there, students enrolled and they will be partnered with a mentor through my organization, whether that's a lender, real estate agent, insurance broker, so on and so forth. And if they stay for that second half of the school throughout, we would pay for their licensing to become an agent or a lender after they got through. Because one thing we do know is that although I'm a strong component of education in college, it's not for everyone, right? And so that doesn't mean there's not an opportunity for you to get out here and make a career for yourself in an industry that you may not even know that is an industry, right? I know when I was 18, 19, I didn't even think about real estate and it being something that I could do. And so that's kind of been my journey. And now being able to give the information and the access back has just been probably the most fulfilling part, what keeps me going.
I love that. And I know that you mentioned earlier on, you said that one of the things, like when you first got started, you weren't really putting your all into it because you were comfortable,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, that's a really dangerous place to be in our life, where we kind of just get to the place where it's like, well, this is good and it's kind of paying my bills, and
Right.
so I can stay afloat. But if one thing that like the pandemic and everything has showed us is that we have to have other streams of income, right? And so I
Absolutely.
love that you say that. Like, so I wanted to ask you, leading up to this, before you were doing real estate, like you said, you were working a regular job. So what are some
Hmm.
things now that you're doing this, that just like you see some changes within yourself? What are some things
It
that you've seen?
it's been primarily my mindset, right? My mindset has been the biggest difference, right? Of truly evolving out of a scarcity mindset. Um, has been the biggest thing, right? It takes a lot of faith, right? Like when you have a job, like, like if I go to work, like I'm going to get a check every 2 weeks, right? Or so. And so right now, building a business and an infrastructure and a brand on your own back, there's a lot more risk involved, right? Because I work 60 plus hours a week to hopefully get paid, right? I work solely commission, right? And I've been on solely commission for years now, right? And so that's very tough, right? That's challenging just mentally because the mindset is that I'm not going to make it. I need the security, and that was my mindset for so long. Fast forward to today, where I can imagine not just from the freedom aspect, but if I'm going to put all my energy and effort into something, it might as well be for me, right? And so the biggest thing I would say the difference is my mindset, transitioning from it being very, very scarcity and to like more of a faith-based and abundant type of mindset, because you have to be when there's nobody to to lean back on and nothing else to lean back on. And so again, don't get me wrong, I don't want to by any means make it seem like it's easy. It's very, very, very hard to get to that transition. It took me some years, right? So it didn't happen overnight. But I would encourage anyone that's even on the brink about it is really trust yourself and believe in yourself. You can do more than you probably ever think you could, and just get out there and start doing it.
That's so good. And you're saying some really good stuff, because a lot of times, we try to do stuff, and if it doesn't happen quickly, we go on to the next thing. And
Right.
in order to really build something, you have to be able to plant your roots somewhere and dig them deep enough and water it long enough
Yep.
for you to actually see the fruit.
Yep.
So what are some things that you could tell some people about home ownership, right? Because I know a lot of people maybe have never owned a house, or maybe grew up even where their parents or their grandparents have never owned anything. Are there any common misconceptions that you think people have regarding like home ownership or that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot, and that's a great question. And I would say probably most common one, especially in the minority neighborhoods, is that it takes a lot of money to own a home, right? Up front, that I gotta have perfect credit, I gotta have an awesome job, and I gotta have a bank full of money, bank account full of money, and that's the complete opposite, right? And so the fact is, there's a lot of programs and there's a lot of information out there. The thing is that real estate sounds like a foreign language to most people when you're jumping into it. If you don't have a background of it or you didn't grow up around it, it's kind of tough to understand for some of your brightest people, right? If that's not what you do, it's like medical, right? Like your doctor can understand things you just can't understand because that's what he or she does for a living. And so I would say home ownership it's a key component to financial wealth, right? It's a generational wealth, right? So, we with my organization, we're heavy on the figures and numbers, right? So right now, home ownership throughout the country for whites are at 73%, right? And it's always hovered above 70%, right? Explains probably the wealth gap, right? When we look at Black home ownership, thank goodness it has rose the last 2 quarters, and so I'm very proud of that. But we are at 48% nationally, so that's a huge gap. So the misconception of that I don't need to own a home because it's just kind of a bill or another hassle. Look at it historically of what it means, right? Because I've seen people send their children to college from that house. I've seen people buy 3 and 4 properties from that house. My aunt is one of them. She bought a house 1964, right? Her and her husband came back. He came back from the military, bought a house 1964. Fast forward today, it's 2020. She still owns that home. She doesn't owe any money on it, and she has bought 3 investment properties from the equity out of that home, right? She actually owns one in Kentucky, in Kansas, where you are, and 2 in Memphis, and so that she all bought out of the equity of that home. So what does that tell you? That this is super important. I would encourage people to just know that it's important in that it is obtainable regardless of where you are. If your credit's jacked up or you got to get a better job, the thing is having a plan and a goal to get started, right? Working with somebody to get you started. The literacy part of it. How does credit even work, right? Take it one step at a time. Understand your credit, understand your finances. It's okay for wherever you are. I've closed 3 clients this year that I have met over the last 2 years. It's taken them nearly 2 years to get to the point where they bought a house, right? So know that it's not necessarily overnight, but it's absolutely necessary if you want to build true generational wealth. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much you make, you can only exchange so much time for money. You're gonna get tired at some point, right? But if you can move into a house and you live there for 10 years, you're going to live somewhere anyway. You're going to pay a mortgage. Is it going to be yours or the landlord's? And that property appreciates, right? 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, $100,000. That's life changing, right? So when your child is 18 and they're like, I want to go to school, and you like, well, I don't have the money, but you have $400,000 in equity in your home. It's a different conversation. So I would just encourage everyone to just know that it's obtainable no matter where you are in your financial state.
That's really good. And you're right. Like you said, it's a foreign language to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us. Because if we just have no idea, how credit works, and I know for me, a lot of things I heard or just misconceptions were that like you had to have a bunch of money, like be prepared
Mm-hmm.
to, have to put down thousands and thousands of dollars, and your credit score has got to
Mm-hmm.
be, 800 in order for you to
Right.
be able to get a
Right.
house. And so it kind of just gets us in this mindset that it's kind of never gonna happen, right?
Yes, it
Um,
becomes out of reach, you know.
yeah, exactly. It just makes it seem like this impossible thing. And so I really love that you're sharing about that, because I think people need to know that it's something that can be done. And I think that's a crazy statistic that you shared, even the fact that like Black home ownership is so much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, so with the people that you're working with, do you see now that you are getting more people of color who are ready to step into that role of owning a home?
100%. Especially since the civil unrest that we experienced over the last few months. Because I work for a Black-owned mortgage bank as well, right? We're one of the very few in the country, right? So the amount of business and people that are looking into it to just find out where they start has been nuts, right? Like I said, I'm working 60 hours a week and I'm 20 hours behind, right? Just to keep up with the flow. So there's definitely a heightened level of awareness of knowing that ownership of property and land is true value. It's just that now it's the literacy part that's super important that we can educate our people that they understand that what steps they have to take. But without a doubt, it has increased, and that's why the number has increased. Because before this year, the last few years, we were historically low. 2018, we had the lowest home ownership rate since they've been calculating it. It was the home ownership rate in 2018 was lower than it was before segregation ended. So when it was legal to discriminate, there was higher Black home ownership than it was in 2018, right? And so how many more African Americans now are educated that are making millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars or well off, right? And how could it just doesn't make sense? Like we're doing better, but it's not showing up in home ownership. And that just goes to the literacy of where we spending our money, because we're spending the money, it's where we spending the money. And so curving the talking points with our community, especially the younger community. Obviously me being a millennial, um, I'm rebranding as the mortgage millennial. When I looked at my business this year, it's been 75% millennials, right? And it's been and probably half of that were Black single females that all bought their first properties. And so that to answer your question, there's definitely a level of awareness within the community to know that that's not the answer to it all, but that's a huge part. If you can narrow that gap, the numbers are the numbers, right? And so unfortunately, African Americans are at the lowest of all the bad statistics, at the highest of all the bad statistics, and the lowest of all the good ones. And so, as an organization and as me, just as someone who's been able to be in the field and learn all this stuff, because remember, I don't come from a background of real estate. Like no one in my family knows real estate. I didn't That's why it took me so long to get here. So to get to this point to where I am now. And so now it's just about being able to give it back, educate my clients and my partners and anybody that I'm working with in the community, just to instill that it's possible.
I love that. And just to kind of switch topics just a
Yeah.
little bit, I know you were talking about, so you're working like 60 hours a week,
Mhm.
right? And you mentioned earlier on that you are a father of four girls. So how does that look? How does pursuing this dream, and this passion that you have for real estate, how does that work with being a father and kind of balancing the two?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's an ongoing uh, adjustment, right? Learning to adjust in balance your time is very, very tough, right? And especially when you, like you said, when you're pursuing something that's important to you. And so, what I do is I do have conversations, and thank God I have a really good support group and family and things of that sort. And even my older daughters are very, they understand the process. You know what I mean? So when I was an agent, I would take them with me on showings, and I'm introducing them to the business at a very young age. So that's been very helpful to be able for them to know what daddy does so they can understand. But I also believe that there in anything that we truly want in life, there's going to be a price to pay, right? And so we have to understand that how bad do you really want what you say you want, right? So for me, I know there's some times where I have to sacrifice time where I'd rather be spending in other places, right? Whether that's with family or not. But for me, it's a bigger cause. It's a greater good because I know for me, I'm looking to break generational curses, right? In terms of how we think, right, and how we maneuver. And so, yeah, I may be sacrificing the time up front, but I believe in what I'm doing will transition and change their lives and their futures in a much positive way. So yes, the balance is definitely a very, very tough part. But I think if you're smart about it, you calendar well, and you just again, there's sometimes where I got to shut down. You know what I mean? I just got to shut it down, and I got to go spend time, or I got to take time for myself, or whatever the case may be. That absolutely happens. But I also believe that there's a when there's a true mission that's put in you and put on you, you'll follow through, and God will help you make a way to make sure everything is covered.
Yeah, and I think I love that you said that you would take them with you, because really what you're doing is you're showing them something bigger. Like you said, it took you longer because you didn't have any experience,
Right.
and you weren't seeing that, oh, these things are possible. And I'm really huge on, breaking generational curses and breaking down the things that just have been passed on that we don't even realize are kind of on us and the way that we think. And
Yep.
so with that, with you have real estate, you're also a father too. Is there anything else that you feel like are some things that you're like doing that's first generation for you, and that you're trying to do for you and your family moving forward?
Yeah, I definitely do, and I think it's addressing mental health, right? And so I think that as a black man, that's kind of a stigma against even speaking about that, and it's not something a way that we grew up with, right? So therapy for myself and for my children as well is something that I've implemented, and that I will continue to do, because the thing what I also believe is that it took me so long because I had to break so many negative barriers that was built just within my life. And so truly addressing that up front has been something kind of key, and learning again going back to learning to balance it, and then doing the same with my children. I have teenage daughters now, and so they are transitioning in their life and new experiences and so on and so forth. And I know the most dangerous thing is for them to keep it all inside. You know what I mean? And so having an outlet, whether that's me or mom, or whether that is their therapist, right? That they have those outlets. And so I think just being more vocal about how you feel, um, and not attributing to the way that we were raised. If so and so just want attention, or such and such. You know what I mean? And so knowing that people are really going through things, right? And so and a lot, especially in the time that we're in now, I mean, people are going through it, right? And so I'm trying to make it a more of a habit to make sure I speak it, and so that more people will feel comfortable about speaking their truth and about how they feel. You know what I mean? So that is something that I'm kind of taking on and more of a challenge with, for the rest of this year, and kind of remaining, is that I'm reaching out and I'm doing things to make sure that I'm good, and as well as my communities, Right now, I'm dealing with my nephews. Right, they're 21 years old, 22 years old, and they're at they're black men, and so I need to get you to a healthy mind state so you can flourish.
And why do you think that is, especially more so for Black men, that it is such a stigma to say, like, I'm not okay? I need to talk to somebody. I may need help. Why do you think that is so much specifically like that for Black men?
It's funny that you asked that because I just was asked that question. I was sitting with a friend of mine, Dr. Hannah, on a live a few weeks ago, and she wrote a book and she addressed that and she asked the same question. And it's tough because it's very hard to explain. It's almost like an unwritten rule of it showing weakness, right? Of you not being able to control, right? And so I know for me, when it was very hard to when years ago when I first started my journey to say like I'm having thoughts that I can't control, right? And so and I definitely wasn't gonna tell my dad or my brother or or anyone like that, you know what I mean? And so um, if I could attribute it, I think it's the lack of each man in generations past haven't had the outlet, right? So nobody actually knows how to address trauma and grief and so on and so forth, right? And so if you're taught that, it just kind of continues to pass down, you know what I mean? And so that's when we talk about generational. That's something that I want to break generation. I never want my children to have to battle some of those same demons on their own and not think that there's help, you know what I mean, or that there's outlets.
Yeah, that's true. And I know even as a Black woman, it may not be as big as a stigma, but it's I feel like in the Black community as a whole, it's just like don't talk about it. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Sweep everything
Mm-hmm.
under the rug. Be strong, and just kind of push yourself out there. And what it does is as you get older, it just turns into these weights on your back. And then it's
Yep.
as you try to do things, it's like, why do I feel like this? Why are things so hard?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is because we're not in a healthy enough place to talk about anything that may have happened to us or anything that we're struggling with.
Yeah.
So I think that is an amazing point. So what does your story look like moving forward? So you're doing real estate, you're pursuing, reaching out to people regarding mental health. You've got 4 children. If you could just write the perfect story for the next 5 years, what does your story look like?
Oh man, it would look like eventually in the next 5 years, the goal would be to eventually start my own operation in terms of a real estate mortgage company. Um, just grow the relationships with my children as they grow up. That's super, super, super important. Obviously, as they get older, they grow up, they start to get further apart from you, right? And so, just to make sure the bond of with them is very strong, um, and truly continue to build myself up, right? I really think I'm in the building stages of my life and career, and so the next 5 years, perfect story would be I have my own company. It's fully functional. I'm able to employ and grow and educate my team, as well as my community. Um, I am finding a like and an act for more advocacy items, right? And so I can see activism being a huge part of my next 5 years. Whether it's locally or statewide or nationally, I don't know what that is, but God will put it on my heart. But activism, self-building, uh, building on the career, and then most importantly is building and being a better father.
That's amazing. I thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me today. This has been a good conversation. So I know that we definitely are going to need a part two going on down the line. But if you could just take a minute to encourage somebody who's listening, maybe they are interested in purchasing their own home, maybe they're struggling with mental health, or maybe it's a little bit of everything all combined. If you could just spend a minute to encourage them, and kind of help them see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel with some of the things that they're looking to do.
Absolutely. So first, I want to thank you again for allowing me to come on and speak with you today, sharing your platform. I appreciate it, and I appreciate our friendship. I don't know how many years it's been, but you've always been a great friend, and I appreciate you, and I wish you much more success in everything that you do. But what I would say to anyone that may be watching the live today is that whatever the goal is, whether it's homeownership, whether it's becoming more healthy mentally, whether it's becoming a better man, a woman, student, employee, leader, whatever that case is that know that it's possible, right? Even in those super dark moments, that it's possible, and that the most important part is the starting point, right? So wherever you are, just start, right? And so whether that's starting writing down what the goal is and taking it one step at a time, everything takes a step. My journey is the case in point of the steps. I went from having having it and then taking off in the career and it dropping down to the floor, and then to over time to be able to build myself up, to build a brand. So I'm living testament that it is possible if you just start wherever you are. Is the most important thing to do, is to start.
Amen. I thank you so much again. I thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. I'm going to put Otis's information down below. Reach out to him if you have questions regarding home ownership. Don't reach out to me because I still need to learn a lot more. So please reach out to him. And I'll put his social media information below. I thank you guys all for tuning in again. Otis, I thank you. I will connect with you later. You guys all have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.